Water, whether it's flowing through the land or falling from the sky, it's vital to life here on Earth. And there's nowhere else it's more obvious than the rainforest. The rainforest lives and breathes water, and surprisingly, it's just as much a part of putting the water back into circulation as it is using it up. It receives an enormous amount of annual rainfall, but the water doesn't just stay there. The canopy of tall trees traps heat from the sun, causing any water that hasn't been absorbed to start evaporating. So it continues on in the water cycle, heading back up to become rain again. Let's explore this cycle together and learn why it's so important, not just to the abundant inhabitants of the rainforest, but also to all of us here on Earth. Hey, I'm Togi. Welcome to my terrarium. The scientific name for the water cycle is hydrologic cycle. Hydro meaning water, logic meaning study or science, and cycle meaning a circulating series of events. So hydrologic cycle means the study of circulating water, but we'll stick to the common name, the water cycle. So let's understand the basics. Water is evaporated from our oceans, rivers, and lakes by the heat of the sun each day. This warm and now moist air rises, but as it gets higher, it starts to cool down again. This is how clouds are made, as the water condenses back into droplets, but now it's lingering up in the atmosphere. As the droplets get bigger, they also get heavier, so they're going to fall back down. And this is precipitation, which we usually see as rain, but it also takes the form of hail, sleet, and snow too. At this point, if it falls into one of our planet's primary water sources, the oceans, rivers, or lakes, then the cycle will be ready to start again. There are a few more routes it can take. So what happens when it falls on land? Well, some water will simply run off the land, straight back into our primary water sources. But some of it will infiltrate the surface. This makes it move more slowly as it travels through the ground. Usually back to rivers first, then on to lakes and oceans. But it can also be absorbed by plant roots at this point. So it will travel up the plant, with some eventually coming back out of the leaves and evaporating into the air. This is called transpiration, and this plays a key role here in the rainforest. So ultimately, water will always continue through the cycle, one way or another. And this process is arguably the most important for life and affects all of us, whether you notice it or not. So let's dive into how it all works. We'll start at our primary water sources. That'll be the oceans, rivers, and lakes. They cover approximately 71% of the planet's surface, and lots of liquid surface area is what we need for evaporation, as this is where the process happens. As the sun beats down on the water's surface, it heats up the top layer so much that it changes from a liquid to a gas. So that's water changing into water vapour. The rate at which this happens can vary, as it's influenced by a few factors. The ambient temperature, density of the body of water, and the wind too. So if it's a hot and windy day over a clean, fresh lake, then you'll get a much higher rate of evaporation than, say, a cool, calm day over the salty ocean. In tropical rainforests, we definitely have plenty of heat, and some of the largest rivers in the world too, that often join many lakes. And with a high amount of precipitation, the topsoil is also very moist. That's before we've even mentioned all those wet leaves on oh so many trees. This all adds up to an awfully large liquid surface area, which along with those high temperatures is just what we need for a rapid rate of evaporation. So now it makes sense as to why tropical rainforests are always so humid. It's because almost everywhere you look, the air is filling up with water vapour. Rainforests are actually so dense with trees and plants that transpiration plays a key role here. This is when water travels through vegetation and is released back into the air as water vapour, primarily from evaporating off their leaves. This process significantly increases the amount of evaporation, and as such it contributes much more water vapour to the atmosphere. which is greatly needed to help balance out that high amount of precipitation. We're now on to condensation. This is the opposite of evaporation, as this is gas changing into a liquid. Here is where all of our water vapour will return to water. The warm air, now moist from the evaporation, will rise, and the higher it gets, the cooler it becomes, until it's no longer warm enough to stay in a gas form. This is the dew point. The air is saturated with water vapour and must condense, returning to liquid form, back to water. This water will then form droplets by condensing onto other particles in the air, like dust or salt, and gather together forming clouds. At this point, the droplets are still small enough to hang in the air, but they are now large enough and abundant enough to see them in the sky as they catch the light. With all this evaporation we just talked about, it's easy to see how the rainforest is influencing condensation too, as there's lots more water vapour in the air ready to be condensed into clouds. All these extra clouds aren't just good for the rainforest either, they help all of us by contributing to cooling our atmosphere and the Earth's surface, which in turn helps regulate global temperatures. But what happens next now we have all these clouds? Well, what goes up must come down. That's right, we're on to precipitation. Get ready for it to rain. And whoa, don't we have a lot of rain in the rainforest? I mean, like so much that we put it in the name. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's make sure we understand precipitation properly first. Simply put, the water that has condensed into clouds can't stay up there forever, as the droplets can only get so large and heavy before they have to fall back down to the surface. This falling of water is precipitation, and primarily it will fall as rain. But when certain temperatures and other conditions are met, then it can also fall as hail, sleet, or snow. We don't need to worry about those happening in a tropical rainforest though, as average temperatures are 20 to 25 degrees Celsius, which is 68 to 77 Fahrenheit. So that's far too warm. But that does mean that it's perfect for rain. So let's check that out. The average rainfall in the Amazon rainforest is 2,000 millimetres, which is 79 inches per year. That's taller than the average man. And to compare, the UK receives 1,220 mil, or 48 inches of rain per year, and the USA trails behind with 750 millimetres, or 29.5 inches. So that's considerably more rain, but the Amazon doesn't even claim the highest annual rainfall. That title goes to the Choco-Darien rainforest, which runs along the entire Colombian Pacific coast, from southwest Panama to northwest Ecuador, with the annual average rainfall starting at 4,000 millimetres or 160 inches, but with some more localised areas reaching as high as 13,000 millimetres or 510 inches, which is an insane amount of rain. That's more than 10 times the UK's average and over 17 times that of the USA. This high level of precipitation is vital for maintaining lush vegetation, as tropical rainforests are located on or near the equator. Which of course is great as it's closest to the sun, so it receives plenty of solar energy that the plants need. But it's also closest to the sun, so it should be scorched into a desert. And without all that rain, it would be. So this balance is key to success. It enables these regions to flourish, which is why they have the highest biodiversity in the world, with around half of all living animals and plant species calling a rainforest home. So it now feels like we've gone full circle, which we technically have, but there's still more water to account for that hasn't got back round yet. Some has been intercepted by the canopy of vegetation. When this happens, the water will either evaporate straight off the leaves or fall off onto the ground. When water does hit the ground, it can then infiltrate the soil. This is good for trees and plants as they need to suck water up their roots, and it also replenishes groundwater supplies. Excess water at this point will continue to travel through the ground to join the closest stream or river, allowing it to rejoin the cycle. Although sometimes this excess can be too much. When the soil is completely saturated, then it can't absorb any more water, so runoff will occur. Water will flow over the ground as gravity pulls it directly downhill to the closest low-lying land. This contributes greatly to water levels in rivers and lakes, and is a crucial aspect of the water cycle, but it can also cause flooding or even flash floods if it happens quickly. So now we've accounted for all the water, and we understand what it's doing at each point. So the next time it rains, we'll all know where it came from, and where it's going. I've learnt lots more than I thought I would whilst making this video, but my favourite thing is that I now know when I feel the raindrops roll down my cheeks that it's been on such a long journey to get here, and will continue on after it's left me. What did you learn? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoyed learning with me, then join me on the next one, as we continue our journey of discovery.